The crystal chandelier cast perfect shadows across our mahogany dining table, where my family performed their nightly theater of perfection. Mother's pearls caught the light as she served Marcus another helping of her famous pot roast, while Father adjusted his gold cufflinks, the ones he wore to impress the Rothschild account. Everything gleamed, everything looked flawless, everything except the empty chair at the far end where I sat, invisible in plain sight. "Marcus landed the Peterson merger today," Father announced, his chest swelling with pride as he looked at my older brother. 22 years old and already closing million-dollar deals. "That's my boy. Brilliant, just like his old man." I pushed my peas around my plate, listening to the familiar symphony of praise that never had my name in it. Marcus basked in the spotlight, his Harvard Business School ring catching the light as he gestured animatedly about corporate strategy. Mother hung on every word, her adoring gaze fixed on her golden child. "Rebecca," Father's voice cut through my thoughts like a blade. "Pass the salt." Not, "How was your day, Rebecca?" Not, "Tell us about your work, Rebecca?" Just, "Pass the salt." I was furniture with a pulse. The antique salt shaker felt heavy in my trembling fingers as I slid it across the polished surface. For a moment, I considered speaking up about my own day, about the 3-hour conference call with venture capitalists about the prototype that could revolutionize data encryption. But Father had already turned back to Marcus, dismissing me as thoroughly as if I'd never existed. "Son, I want you to join me at the country club tomorrow. The Hendersons are considering investing in our firm, and they specifically asked to meet that brilliant Anderson boy." Father's smile could have powered our mansion for a week. "This is how legacies are built, Marcus. One handshake at a time." The irony burned in my throat. If only they knew that while they were grooming Marcus for small-time family business success, I was quietly building something that would make their legacy look like a child's lemonade stand. "What about Rebecca?" Marcus asked, and for a split second, hope fluttered in my chest. "Doesn't she work in tech or something?" Father's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Rebecca? Oh, she tinkers with computers. It's cute, really. Like a hobby." He waved his hand dismissively. "The Hendersons want to meet serious business minds, not someone who plays with gadgets all day." Plays with gadgets. If only he knew those gadgets had generated $90 million in the past 18 months. Mother nodded in agreement, her smile syrupy sweet. "Rebecca's always been our creative one. Remember when she wanted to study engineering? We tried to guide her towards something more suitable. Teaching, perhaps, or nursing. Something where she could help people instead of getting lost in all those complicated technical things." I felt the familiar sting, the way their words could slice through my confidence like butter. They made my achievements sound like finger painting, my ambitions like childhood fantasies that I should have outgrown by now. "I think I'll head up to my room," I murmured, standing quietly. "Of course, sweetheart," Mother said without looking at me, already turning back to Marcus. "Sleep well." As I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, the same room I'd retreated to every night for 28 years, I could hear Father's voice booming from below. "Marcus, tomorrow I want to introduce you as the future of Anderson Holdings." The future of Anderson Holdings. The company built on the fortune my great-grandfather had earned, the legacy that would apparently skip right over me and land squarely on Marcus's shoulders. Not because he was more qualified, not because he was smarter, simply because he was male, charismatic, and had always been the apple of Father's eye. I closed my bedroom door and leaned against it, staring at the participation trophies still lining my shelves, constant reminders of how I'd always been second place in my own family. The irony wasn't lost on me that in my childhood room, surrounded by symbols of mediocrity, I was secretly running a tech empire that Forbes had called the most promising stealth startup of the decade. My laptop sat closed on my desk, hiding the encrypted files that contained my real life, the board meetings, the investor calls, the late-night strategy sessions that had built something extraordinary, something they couldn't see because they'd decided long ago that I wasn't worth seeing. The next morning brought a new variation of the same song, Father's voice carried from his study as I passed by on my way to the kitchen. "She's just not built for this world, Catherine," he was telling Mother. "Some people are leaders, and some people are, well, followers. Rebecca's a sweet girl, but she doesn't have the instincts, the drive. She's not sharp enough for real business." Not sharp enough. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd heard variations of them my entire life. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, the ceramic almost cracking under the pressure. "Maybe she could work for Marcus someday," Mother suggested gently. "As an assistant or something, keep it in the family." An assistant? To my younger brother. The brother who'd graduated business school while I was already running board meetings in Manhattan, who celebrated closing deals worth millions while I was quietly orchestrating acquisitions worth tens of millions. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to them plan my small, disappointing future while my phone buzzed with messages from my legal team about the Wall Street Journal interview scheduled for next week. The cognitive dissonance was staggering, hearing them discuss my inadequacies while simultaneously managing a company that had just been valued at over $300 million. "She needs to be realistic about her limitations," Father continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I knew so well. "I've tried to help her understand that not everyone can be exceptional. Some people are meant to support the achievers, not be achievers themselves." Support the achievers. Like my achievements were somehow less real because they happened outside this house, beyond their narrow vision of success. That afternoon, the knife twisted deeper. Father's business associates came by the house for their weekly poker game, a tradition that had been going on since before I was born. I was reading in the living room when they arrived, but I might as well have been part of the furniture for all the attention they paid me. "Robert," called Mr. Peterson, shaking Father's hand vigorously. "I keep hearing amazing things about your boy Marcus. Word is he's got the Midas touch." Father practically glowed. "That's my son. Brilliant as they come. Already thinking 3 moves ahead, just like I taught him. The boy's going to take this family business to heights I never imagined." Mr. Henderson nodded approvingly. "And your daughter? How's she doing?" Father's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, Rebecca's finding her way. She's got a little computer job downtown. Nothing too demanding. We're hoping she'll settle down soon, maybe find a nice husband to take care of her." A little computer job. Nothing too demanding. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not heartbreak, because I'd long since stopped expecting their approval. This was something deeper. This was the moment when the last shred of hope finally died, when I realized that no matter what I accomplished, they would never see me as anything more than their disappointing daughter who played with computers. "That's nice," Mr. Henderson said politely, already losing interest. "Well, let's hear more about Marcus's latest deals." And just like that, I was erased from the conversation again. The weeks that followed felt like psychological warfare disguised as family dinners. Every night brought fresh reminders of my place in the Anderson hierarchy. Dead last, barely acknowledged, consistently underestimated. "Rebecca, you're so quiet lately," Mother observed one evening, her voice dripping with false concern. "Are you having troubles at work? You know, if that little job isn't working out, I'm sure Marcus could put in a good word for you somewhere more suitable." More suitable. Like my current success was somehow unsuitable, inappropriate for someone of my supposed limited capabilities. "I'm fine, Mother," I replied, cutting my steak with perhaps more force than necessary. "Of course you are, sweetheart," she cooed. "But you know, at your age, you really should be thinking about your future, marriage, children, a woman's real purpose in life." Father nodded sagely. "Your mother's right. This career phase is all well and good, but eventually you'll want to focus on what really matters: family, home. Let a man take care of the important decisions. Let a man take care of the important decisions. While I was making decisions that affected hundreds of employees and millions of dollars in revenue." Marcus, to his credit, sometimes looked uncomfortable during these conversations, but he never spoke up, never defended me, never questioned why his achievements were celebrated while mine were dismissed as hobbies. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in November. I'd just finished a conference call with investors in Tokyo. A deal worth $47 million that would expand our operations into the Asian market. I was exhausted but exhilarated, riding the high of another major victory. I walked into the dining room to find my family already seated, their faces glowing with excitement. "Rebecca," Mother practically sang, "you're just in time to hear Marcus's wonderful news." I slid into my usual seat at the end of the table, noting how they hadn't waited for me to start dinner, hadn't saved me any of the good rolls, hadn't even noticed I was an hour late. "Tell her, Marcus," Father urged, his chest puffed with pride. Marcus grinned, holding up a bottle of champagne. "I just got promoted to senior associate. They're giving me my own office and everything. Father says it's the fastest promotion in the company's history." The champagne cork popped and golden liquid flowed into crystal glasses. 3 glasses. No one had poured one for me. "That's wonderful," I said genuinely. Marcus worked hard, and I was happy for his success, even if it paled in comparison to what I'd achieved that same day. "Isn't it incredible?" Mother gushed. "Our brilliant boy, moving up so fast. The Hendersons are already talking about making him a partner within 5 years. Father raised his glass in a toast. "To Marcus, the brightest star in the Anderson family constellation." They clinked glasses, their laughter filling the room while I sat there empty-handed, literally and figuratively excluded from their celebration. "What about you, Rebecca?" Marcus asked, perhaps noticing my empty hands. "How was your day?" For a moment, I considered telling them about the Tokyo deal, about the Wall Street Journal interview, about the fact that their disappointing daughter had just closed a deal worth more than their family business made in 3 years, but Father answered before I could open my mouth. "Oh, Rebecca had her little computer thing today," he said dismissively, waving his champagne glass. "Nothing important. Not like what our star here accomplished." Nothing important. $47 million was nothing important. The words hit me like a slap, but it was Mother's addition that really drove the knife home. "Rebecca, dear, you really should ask Marcus for career advice. He obviously has such a better understanding of how business works. Maybe he could help you find something more realistic for someone with your limitations." Something more realistic for someone with my limitations. I stared at them, really stared, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time in my life. Father, pompous and dismissive, so invested in Marcus's mediocre success that he couldn't see the empire being built right under his nose. Mother, saccharine and condescending, genuinely believing that her daughter was some kind of charity case who needed to be managed and guided toward appropriate lowered expectations. And Marcus, brilliant Marcus, sitting there basking in praise for achievements that wouldn't even register as footnotes in my quarterly reports. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Here I was, having just orchestrated a deal that would be featured in financial newspapers around the world, being lectured about my limitations by people who thought a senior associate promotion was the pinnacle of business achievement. "You know what?" I said quietly, setting down my fork. "You're absolutely right." They looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to elaborate on my inadequacies, perhaps finally ready to admit that I needed their guidance and lowered expectations. "I should definitely be more realistic about my limitations," I continued, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. "Thank you for the reminder." Father nodded approvingly. "That's my sensible girl. Self-awareness is the first step toward finding your proper place in life." My proper place in life. If only he knew that my proper place was about to be splashed across the cover of the Wall Street Journal under the headline, "Tech's Best Kept Secret, the $90 million woman you've never heard of." As I excused myself from dinner and climbed the stairs to my room, I could hear them below, already back to celebrating Marcus's triumph, having dismissed me as thoroughly as if I'd never existed. But something had changed in that moment. Something fundamental had shifted inside me, like tectonic plates moving after years of pressure. For 28 years, I'd absorbed their dismissal, internalized their low expectations, allowed their vision of me to shape how I saw myself. No more. I opened my laptop and stared at the interview questions the Wall Street Journal had sent over. In exactly 1 week, the world would know the truth about Rebecca Anderson, about the quiet girl who'd built an empire while her family was busy celebrating participation trophies. They wanted to keep me small, manageable, appropriately limited. They were about to learn that their biggest limitation had been their imagination. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I called my therapist's emergency line. Dr. Sarah Chen had been gently suggesting for months that my family dynamics weren't normal, but I'd always brushed off her concerns. Tonight, sitting in my childhood bedroom with $47 million in my bank account and my father's voice still echoing, "Nothing important," I finally understood what she'd been trying to tell me. "Rebecca," her calm voice came through the phone at midnight. "What's happening?" "I think I've been living in an alternate reality," I whispered, afraid my family might hear me through the walls. "For 28 years, I've been trying to prove I'm worthy of their love, but they're never going to see me as anything more than their disappointing daughter." Tell me what triggered this realization. I found myself pouring out the entire evening. The Tokyo deal, the champagne toast I wasn't included in, the casual dismissal of my little computer thing. As I spoke, something clicked into place, like puzzle pieces I'd been forcing into the wrong spots finally finding their proper configuration. "Rebecca, what you're describing sounds like a classic narcissistic family system," Dr. Chen said gently. "You've been cast as the scapegoat while Marcus plays the golden child. Nothing you achieve will ever be enough because your role isn't based on your actual worth. It's based on what they need you to be to maintain their psychological equilibrium." The words hit me like lightning. Scapegoat, golden child, narcissistic family system. Suddenly, every dismissive comment, every ignored achievement, every time I'd been made to feel invisible made perfect sense. "But what do I do with this information?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You stop trying to earn something that was never available to you in the first place," she said softly, "and you start living for the person who actually matters, yourself." I hung up the phone and opened my laptop, diving deep into research about family scapegoating, narcissistic parents, and golden child syndrome. Every article felt like reading my own biography. The patterns were all there: the systematic devaluation, the impossible standards, the way my achievements were minimized while Marcus's were celebrated. By dawn, I had a new understanding of my entire life. More importantly, I had a plan. The Wall Street Journal interview was scheduled for the following Friday. The journalist, Amanda Rivers, had already conducted preliminary research and was particularly interested in my stealth approach to building a tech empire. She had no idea she was about to document the most satisfying family revelation in corporate history. "Ms. Anderson," Amanda said as we sat in my downtown office, a space my family had never seen, in a building they didn't know I owned. "You've managed to build a $90 million company while maintaining complete anonymity. That's almost unheard of in today's startup culture. Why the secrecy?" I smiled, thinking of Father's dismissive comments about my little computer job. "Sometimes the best strategy is to let people underestimate you. When they can't see you coming, they can't block your path." "And your family? Do they know about your success?" "My family knows I work in tech," I said carefully. "But they've never been particularly interested in the details." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "Your father owns Anderson Holdings, correct? A successful family business. I imagine he must be proud of your entrepreneurial spirit." I paused, considering how to phrase this diplomatically for a major publication. "My father has very traditional ideas about success and gender roles. Let's just say my achievements don't fit his expected narrative." "That must be difficult." "It was," I admitted, "until I realized that their inability to see my worth says nothing about my actual value." The interview continued for 2 hours, covering everything from my early programming days to the complex algorithms that had made my company revolutionary. Amanda was thorough, asking about my investors, my team, my vision for the future. Every question reminded me of conversations I'd tried to have at family dinners, only to be dismissed or ignored. "One final question," Amanda said as she packed up her recording equipment. "What would you say to other women who might be struggling for recognition in their families or industries?" I thought about my younger self, sitting at that dinner table, night after night, trying to shrink herself small enough to fit their limited expectations. Stop performing for an audience that was never going to applaud, I said. Build something so remarkable that the world has no choice but to notice. And remember, the people who matter will see your worth from the beginning. The ones who don't, well, they'll see it eventually when everyone else does. As Amanda left, she turned back with a smile. This is going to be a cover story, you know. Tech's best kept secret. It's exactly the kind of narrative our readers love. Cover story. I thought about Father's country club friends, Mother's bridge club, Marcus's business school alumni network. In 1 week, every person in their social circle would see my face staring back at them from newsstands across the country. The irony was delicious. I spent the next week preparing, not just for the article's publication, but for the aftermath. I changed my phone number, giving the new one only to my assistant and a few close friends. I had my security team update all protocols. Most importantly, I prepared myself emotionally for the nuclear fallout that was about to hit the Anderson household. Dr. Chen and I had several sessions that week, role-playing different scenarios. They're going to love bomb you, she warned. Suddenly, you'll be the most wonderful daughter in the world. They'll act like they always knew you were special, always supported your dreams. And if I buy into that, then you'll be right back where you started, trying to earn approval from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it consistently. She was right, of course, but part of me, the scared little girl who'd spent 3 decades begging for scraps of affection, still hoped that maybe, finally, they would see me. The magazine hit stands on a Thursday morning. The cover was striking, a professional photo of me in my corner office, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind me. The headline read, Tech's best kept secret, the $90 million woman you've never heard of. My assistant called me at 7 a.m. Rebecca, the phone has been ringing nonstop. CNN wants an interview. Forbes is requesting a follow-up piece. And... She paused. Your father has called 17 times in the past hour. 17 times. In 28 years, Father had never called me twice in one day. I turned off my phone and drove to my penthouse apartment, the one my family didn't know existed, in the building I'd purchased anonymously 2 years earlier. I needed space to process what was about to happen. By noon, the article had gone viral online. My LinkedIn profile, which I'd deliberately kept minimal, was suddenly flooded with connection requests. SARS Tech's secret woman was trending on Twitter. Investment firms were leaving voicemails about acquisition offers. But the call I was waiting for came at exactly 2:47 p.m. Rebecca? Mother's voice was shaky, confused. Sweetheart, we need to talk. There's been some kind of mistake in the newspaper. Some kind of mistake. Even faced with photographic evidence and a 5,000-word investigative piece, they couldn't process that their disappointing daughter had built an empire. What kind of mistake, Mother? Well, this article, it says you own a company worth $90 million. But that can't be right, can it? I mean, you just work with computers. The cognitive dissonance in her voice was almost comical. She was literally reading about my achievements while simultaneously denying they could be real. It's not a mistake, Mother. Silence. Then, but how is that possible? You never told us. I tried to tell you. Every time I attempted to discuss my work, Father would change the subject or dismiss it as unimportant. That's not... Rebecca, you need to come home right now. Your father is beside himself. The Hendersons called and the Petersons, and everyone is asking about this article. We need to understand what's happening. Beside himself. Father was probably having the first genuine crisis of his life, realizing that while he'd been grooming Marcus for small-time success, his overlooked daughter had been building something extraordinary. I'll be there at 6, I said, then hung up. The drive to my childhood home felt like traveling through time. Every familiar landmark reminded me of a different version of myself, the eager little girl who'd tried so hard to make them proud, the teenager who'd given up on their approval, the young woman who'd learned to hide her ambitions to avoid their mockery. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I saw them waiting by the front door, Mother wringing her hands, Father pacing like a caged animal, Marcus standing awkwardly to the side. For the first time in my life, they looked smaller than I remembered. Rebecca! Mother rushed toward me as I stepped out of my Tesla, another purchase they'd never known about. Oh, sweetheart, we're so confused. This article, these numbers, is it really true? I looked at her, really looked, and saw not the intimidating figure of my childhood, but a middle-aged woman who'd built her entire identity around managing other people's achievements. The article had shattered her understanding of reality, and she genuinely didn't know how to process it. Every word is true, Mother. Father stepped forward, his face a mixture of bewilderment and something that might have been shame. Rebecca, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? I tried to tell you, Father. Remember last month when I mentioned the venture capital meeting? You said it sounded like I was playing with Monopoly money. Remember when I tried to explain the encryption algorithm? You told me to leave the technical talk to the men. His face went pale. I could see him remembering those conversations, probably dozens of others where he'd dismissed my attempts to share my world with them. But $90 million, he stammered. The article says you employ over 200 people. It says you've revolutionized data security. How did we not know? Because you didn't want to know, I said quietly. You needed me to be the family disappointment so Marcus could be the family success. My achievements didn't fit your narrative, so you simply edited them out. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up for you. I should have asked more questions about your work. I appreciated his apology, but I could see the wheels turning in his head, too. He was realizing that every family dinner where he'd been celebrated for his modest achievements, his sister had been sitting there having accomplished something extraordinary. The golden child crown was feeling a bit tarnished. The Hendersons want to meet you, Father said suddenly, as if this was the most important thing. And the Petersons. Everyone's calling, asking how we could have kept such an incredible success story in the family secret. And there it was. Even now, faced with undeniable proof of my worth, his first thought was about how my success could benefit him, how it could impress his friends, enhance his reputation, add to his legacy. I'm not your secret weapon, Father, I said calmly. I'm not your bragging right or your ticket to impressing the country club. For 28 years, you've treated me like I was invisible. You don't get to claim credit for my success now that it's public. Mother's eyes filled with tears. Real ones, I thought, though with her, it was always hard to tell. Rebecca, please, we're your family. We love you. Do you? I asked. Because love isn't just a word you say. It's seeing someone's worth, celebrating their achievements, supporting their dreams. When's the last time any of you asked about my work because you were genuinely interested, not because you needed me to do something? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. We can fix this, Father said desperately. We can be better. You're our daughter, our brilliant daughter. We always knew you were special. No, you didn't, I said, not unkindly, but with absolute clarity. You knew I was different, and you tried to make that difference disappear because it didn't fit your vision of what I should be. I looked at each of them, Mother with her pearls and her desperate smile, Father with his deflated pride, Marcus with his dawning understanding of how wrong they'd all been. I forgive you, I said finally. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to the way things were. What does that mean? Mother whispered. It means I'm building a life with people who see my worth without needing a magazine article to prove it. It means I'm surrounding myself with those who celebrate my successes instead of diminishing them. It means I'm finally free from trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Father's phone rang, probably another country club member calling about the article. For once in his life, he ignored it. Rebecca, please, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Tell us how to fix this. Tell us how to be the family you deserve. I smiled sadly, thinking of all the years I'd longed to hear those words. You can start by genuinely apologizing, not just for missing my success, but for actively diminishing me for 3 decades. You can examine why you needed me to be small for Marcus to feel big. You can do the work to understand how narcissistic family systems operate and commit to changing those patterns. I paused, looking at our family home. The perfect facade that had hidden so much dysfunction. But mostly, you can understand that I don't need your approval anymore. I've learned to value myself. I've built something remarkable. I've found my tribe, people who saw my worth from the beginning, who invested in my vision, who celebrate my victories without needing them explained or justified. The sun was setting behind our mansion, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. In the fading light, everything looked different. Smaller, less intimidating, more like a beautiful prison I'd finally escaped. "I hope you can be happy for me," I said as I walked back toward my car. "I hope you can celebrate this success, even though you didn't see it coming. And I hope you can love the real me, not just the version you wanted me to be." "Where are you going?" Mother called after me. "To have dinner with people who knew I was brilliant before Forbes told them so." As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, standing together in the fading light, probably for the first time having to confront who they really were without their scapegoat to blame and their golden child to worship. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. My company had gone public, making me one of the youngest female CEOs on the NASDAQ. I'd moved to a penthouse in Soho, filled with art and light, and the sounds of a life lived authentically. My team had grown to over 400 employees, each one handpicked for their brilliance and integrity. Mother sent birthday cards now, tentative, careful notes that suggested she was actually trying to understand who I was. Father occasionally forwarded business articles about my company with brief messages like "proud of you" that felt genuine, if decades overdue. Marcus had started therapy and was working to understand his role in the family dysfunction. But the most important transformation was internal. I no longer measured my worth by their approval or my success by their recognition. I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their limitations. Not just a company, but a life filled with people who saw me clearly from the beginning. Dr. Chen and I still met monthly, processing the complex feelings that came with breaking free from family patterns while still loving the flawed people who'd raised me. "Do you regret the years you spent seeking their approval?" she asked during one session. I considered the question carefully. "No," I said finally. "Those years taught me resilience. They taught me to value authentic recognition when I found it. They taught me that external validation is hollow unless it's built on internal worth." "And your family now?" "They're learning. Slowly." Father actually asked me about quantum encryption last week. Not because he understood it, but because he wanted to understand what mattered to me. Mother enrolled in a computer literacy class. They're trying to build a bridge to who I actually am instead of who they wanted me to be. The girl who once sat invisible at their dinner table was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth regardless of who could see it. The empire I'd built wasn't just financial. It was emotional, psychological, spiritual. I'd transformed from their greatest disappointment into my own greatest success. And the beautiful irony, the very qualities they'd tried to diminish, my analytical mind, my unconventional thinking, my refusal to fit their narrow definitions, those were exactly the traits that had made me extraordinary. Their biggest limitation had indeed been their imagination. But my liberation had taught me that the only limits that truly matter are the ones we place on ourselves.